I believe that Adam and Eve were not the first man and woman. After all, how could Adam be the first man if the Most High had created man and woman in chapter 1, but did not create Adam until chapter 2? We are taught that Adam was the first man that was ever created, and we accept that without question. But why? Genesis 1:27. So Elohim created in his own image, in the image of Elohim created he him, male and female created he them. Genesis 2 verse 7. And Yahuwah Elohim formed the man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living soul. Genesis 4:13 through 14. And Cain said to El Yahuwah, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from the face shall I be hidden, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that finds me shall slay me. Genesis 4:17. And Cain knew his woman, and she conceived and bore Chanach, also known as Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Chanach. Genesis 5:1. This is the sefer of the generations of Adam. So let's start with the story of Cain and Abel and get a little bit into that, and then we will actually backtrack to explain how this all makes sense. Adam and Eve had their first son, Cain, and was followed by Havel. But I will just, from here on, I will make it a little bit easier, and I will just say Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel instead of the Hebrew names. And as we all know, Cain went out and killed Abel, and then was exiled by the Most High himself. Now, before he is completely exiled, he pleads with Yahuwah, and he begs him to allow him to stay, basically, because he's so worried about the people that are out there that will surely slay him. So, one of my questions to you is, if Adam and Eve were the first man and woman, and then they had two sons, Cain and Abel, but Cain kills Abel, leaving Adam, Eve, and Cain, who is Cain afraid of? Do you really think he's terrified that his parents are going to hunt him down? I don't think that's who he's talking about, because he wants to stay with his parents. So who is he worried about? So then when Cain is exiled, he travels to Nod, and his woman, don't know where she came from, all of a sudden is having a baby. But where did she come from? There was no other woman. There was Eve. So where did his wife come from? They don't even give you a name. Who is she? This is where we go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, where I'm just going to sum it up. He creates man and woman in his own image. But that was on the 6th day, and that was in chapter 1. But we don't even hear about Adam until chapter 2 in verse 7. So if the Most High was already creating man and woman, or male and female, on the 6th day, but Adam did not come around until after the great day of rest, then who or what was created on the 6th day? I personally believe that man and woman was created before Adam and Eve were created. And I think this really does explain a lot. I think this explains who Cain was afraid of, as well as where Cain got a wife, because there was already people here. I believe that Adam was different, though. I believe that he was the first one to truly get the breath of life through the nostrils. And I believe, once again, I believe that this is where the soul came in, was that he had already created man and woman, but he wanted to create something more. So he gave man a soul, and that was Adam. And then he was set apart from other men, which is why he was held in the Garden of Eden, because I believe that to the Most High, he was basically like a prized possession, a final, finished, perfect product in his eyes. And then he only had one rule: don't eat from that tree. As I said, I believe that he was highly valued by the Most High himself. But the problem was that he betrayed him by hearkening to his own woman and listening to what she told him to do. And when he did that, he betrayed him. And then he was exiled along with his woman to live the rest of their days on the earth amongst all of the other men and women that had already existed there. The difference was he had a soul, but he also had the knowledge of good and evil. So I do not believe that Adam was the first man, but I do believe that he was the first man that had the breath of life truly inside of him, to where he was something else, something more. I think with further research that this could really start to explain a lot of our human history. If there were people around that were here before Adam, then that could really explain a lot of these ancient civilizations, a lot of these structures that we see that just don't seem to fit the narrative. And maybe that's because we just never truly looked to understand that narrative. Now, some people believe that chapter 2 is basically just a deeper explanation as to actually what happened on day 6. My problem with that is I have not come across anything in scripture that actually says that in any shape or form. And then somebody could say, but that doesn't make any sense because Adam was in the Garden of Eden when he named all of the animals. And I'm not denying that, but that does not mean that the animals did not exist before that. They were created on day 5 and day 6. So why would you automatically believe that all those animals were created after Adam? Now, I understand somebody studies the Apocrypha that they're going to go, no, well, if you look in the book of Jubilee, then it's actually going to say that Cain came back and he married his sister, Awan, and took her as his wife. And then they had the children. But once again, the Apocrypha is not canonized. And no, I'm not stating that that means it's not real or anything like that. The Bible that I read from has the Apocrypha in it. And it's a very different book. It opens you up to just more than what you're told is happening in Scripture. Most people don't want to even get involved with the spirituality side of Scripture. They just want to stick to the tangible evidence, but they don't want more. But once again, if you're trying to get involved with your faith, you have to have faith. And that's not something that can be measured. This is all a theory that I've been thinking about and I'm sure there's others that have similar theories. But this would explain so many other things. This would explain that the human race did not just come from two people that you kind of had to believe they all started having incest. This would go against that and kind of actually make a lot more sense. It also explains who Cain was afraid of. Once again, he's saying that everybody out there is going to try to slay me. So who was he talking about if there was not pre-existing people? This explains who Cain actually married. And in all reality, this theory of having Adam be the first man with a soul, but having plenty of people that existed before Adam, this kind of explains the whole entire NPC idea. The idea of people that seem like normal people, but there's just something missing, like they don't have a soul. And it makes me wonder, do they actually have a soul? I hope they do. Now I'm going to leave you with another question. It says that Yah created everything within 6 days. So my question to you is, are those human days or are those days beyond what we can imagine? There's a lot of people that believe that a day for Yah is 1,000 of our years. So if that's the case, could each of the days been 1,000 years? Just think on it.